which is involved with evaluation of the conservation easement. Upper Saco Land Trust is here with Doug representing them. And we have two alternates I'd like to elevate to full contributors, so I'll make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Or do we, okay, I don't
Second.
know,
Oh, no, we're good.
we're good.
Okay, so we're in good shape. So, all right, so we received your updated version, which is dated 4/18, at least Kate recorded it as that.
But could I just interrupt you for 1 second? And that is that I was asked to do minutes
Okay,
for the meeting.
Okay.
So, just so you know,
appreciate that,
I will
thank
be-
you.
and Joy was supposed to be also, but I don't see her
Okay.
yet, so, okay.
Hi.
Just came to listen.
Okay. Well, the latest version is a very significant improvement over the prior versions. I have to say that. I compliment you for making a series of adjustments that I think were significant and beneficial.
Linda Kumo, she of course was one of the founders of the Land Trust, and she came back after retirement to work with us on a limited basis, and now
Great.
we're using her because of our short staff, but she said she spent about 15 hours
I believe it
making
in
edits
terms.
to this, and
and,
she knows
well,
what she's doing, so
right.
that's, yeah.
It's a very significant. The intent is to try and refine positions here, and as I mentioned before the meeting, that the intent of this meeting is to have a conversation essentially, and make recommendations for a future meeting, which would be the full board and all of that. So it's for information as well as eliciting comments, as well as making suggestions in terms of how we can benefit this. The significant thing that I want to bring up is what are the permitted activities? And there are provisions in this agreement as it stands which really are confusing. Okay, so there's various paragraphs where one thing is in there, and another thing is in there, and then another thing is in there. There's three different places where there are references to what permitted events are. I'd like to focus that on one significant paragraph that essentially encapsulates what we think is the appropriate actions. So that's in my mind, that's the major issue for tonight. The rest of it is really dealing with what I think are issues that are really clarification.
On, Mr. Chairman, on page 4, the number 2 deals with conservation purposes.
Yeah,
I think everything up to that point is kind of boilerplate,
okay. Well,
so maybe we
I
can start there.
prepared, I don't know whether any of you guys printed out this.
Oh,
Okay,
oh, I didn't.
You didn't get it?
okay. So
Or no?
let's start off at the beginning and then we'll work our way through it. First question I have is inhabitants of town of Madison. And I think it's clarified by the fact that the town of Madison signs this agreement. So I don't know why you have inhabitants, but it's maybe
It's old custom.
old custom.
So I don't think it matters.
The other thing is that it requires a finalized survey, and you're in the midst of doing that at this particular point in time. So as everything falls into place, hopefully the survey is done so the deed could be prepared properly.
It will have to be, yes.
Okay, so that, I wouldn't say we're concerned about it, but we'd like to be informed of the progress of you completing the survey. Okay. Page, on the first page, recitals, you have a date 2025. Which I think everybody is, what's been advertised is November, it's the second line down on recitals.
Page 2.
Page
Yeah, under recital, second line.
2. Oh,
Second
Right at the
line.
top.
Yeah, the top.
gotcha. Oh, I see it, sorry. Yeah.
Susan.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Okay, so, I don't know what that means, but essentially, what we were informed of was that it was targeted November.
November 15th.
Excuse me
The
again.
official closing date, and that was in the purchase and sale agreement that's
Okay.
between
All right, so,
the Conservation Fund and the landowners, the Crows. So what is gonna happen at this point is the Conservation Fund is going to buy the land from the Crows because they won't do an extension. And we will be into 2025,
okay.
waiting until we get all of our funds.
All right,
raised.
so it's just putting
It
you
will
on
be
notice.
sometime in early 2025, the best
Okay,
we
just
know.
putting you on notice that 25 is a.
Yeah.
But can I ask a question of clarification? When the closing happens, or is it in 2025 when we will turn over the funds? Does that happen at the same time as acceptance of the conservation easement? Do those two things happen on the same date?
Right, the land trust will get the land and you will get the easement at the same time.
That'll be, so
Yes.
whenever we're happy with the easement, that's when the funds would be due to USVLT.
Yes.
At closing, it'd be at closing.
But he says closing is November 15th. To me, that's a different thing,
There are two closings,
okay?
because the landowner won't wait, and that's where the conservation fund comes in, that's what they do, they'll buy land and hold it.
Right, that's November 15th. And then there will be a second date to be determined
Right,
Okay.
for the funds to come from Madison in exchange for acceptance of an agreed-upon conservation easement.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the closing we're dealing with is the one that will be scheduled for 2025,
Right.
presumably. Okay, so that clarifies 24 versus 25, thank you.
All right, yes.
Page 4. One of the things that you may want to mention is that public hearing took place and that there was unanimous approval of the conservation easement.
Okay.
So that, it's just one of those things that, one of the elements here is that you reference a master plan of 2002 and 2010. Last meeting, I made a motion that suggested that we hold off with the update until after this is done, because why have a new master plan ahead of a major event? So our intent is to do an update of the master plan after this transaction, so that we can do it all at once, rather than have a 2024 version 1 and a version 2 and shortly thereafter. So you may want to reference the public hearing that took place on March 7th, 2024. Page 6.
If we have other questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Before you get to page 6, can we ask for clarification?
Sure, go ahead.
On page 3, 1.2, will we get to see the baseline documentation before? I'm
Yes.
just wondering if you have a schedule for the baseline documentation?
In general, we need to have those done before the closing, and
Okay,
you would sign off acknowledging that you have read it. And it's just that these are legal documents that just existing condition plans, so that's,
right.
so it's a very thorough thing, and it's usually included with the survey and everything, so.
Joy, Noreen has agreed to take the minutes.
Well.
Unless
I
you
think
want to.
somehow Kate has both of us doing it, so
Okay,
we'll
I don't-
confer if she,
I don't believe we need two people doing it, so one
Well,
person
it's
can
up to you.
relax, I hope.
um,
One thing that what I will offer to do is to hook my laptop up so we can see it together on the big screen, and we could add comments as we go, or if that's more than we need, then I'm happy to, up to you.
If you'd like to do it,
If it's going that way, fine, and if it's going well now, then we can keep going.
well, we got to maybe page 3
Yeah.
without that help, so, I don't know, it's up to anybody else if they feel it's
I
appropriate.
mean, one possibility is I'll make notes and then we'll come back with a revision around what we say and
Yeah.
then see if it
Okay.
matches what
Okay,
you'd
so
like to
let's
have, I guess.
move on in terms.
well, actually,
Make it-
page 4, where the conservation purposes are, I think it's really important that we keep those in mind, and I like that priority. I do. I don't know if anybody else thought about that much, but I like the priority of those purposes, and we really have to keep those in mind when we're talking about this document. Oh,
Commercial versus non-commercial.
that was my next question.
Sorry.
It was all right.
Next question
That's
is-
okay.
Go
Is,
ahead.
is it, is, I was hoping Tim Nolan would be here to help us too. Was he not
I
planning to
let
be
him
here?
know, I let him know about
Oh,
it.
man. So I need more understanding of commercial versus non-commercial, because that is a big thing on
Well,
page,
that's-
on these pages here. So-
Essentially, that was my statement that we need and landowners' receipt of payments for certain things or whatever. So in 3.1b, that is an issue of, does anybody have a particular opinion on those kinds of things?
I think the first 1, 2, 3, 4 are definite no's, first,
Would be no's for me.
and then the other two, I'm wondering, the sale of electricity, I think that goes back to commercial, would we allow solar panels up there?
Again, it's in another location, that
Right.
reference. This is my hot button in terms of what I would like to have a discussion on tonight, is basically this kind of situation, because it's embodied in other, as I said, other provisions.
And I don't understand I think the last two need further explanation. And I think that would tie into what the priorities of the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust as well. What your vision is for the land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I just, in context, we're usually the ones putting conservation easements on a landowner's property. And now
Right.
the thing is reversed a little bit, so I'd say this wouldn't give us any heartburn to strike most of these.
okay, so,
And
so our recommendation is to,
Yeah.
examples of commercial activities that are with potentially de minimis impacts might include. So we're going to delete that particular set of examples.
The whole yellow.
The whole
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
Great.
I think the last one, Tim could probably attest to this, but occasionally we might do something like timber stand improvement practice that involves NRCS cost sharing funds,
Right.
and which we do go after quite a bit. And once we will have a forest management plan done
Right.
that will guide us, on how to, there's a lot of things that need to be improved out there, I'd say, because of the heavy cutting that was
Okay.
done for future growth, and so
Well, why don't you
that might be in there. Yeah.
rephrase that in
Yeah.
terms of
This one is,
making it something that you believe is included. So,
More of the forest management side of it than any
right,
other.
put it in the forest
Yeah,
management.
Right,
yes, okay,
right.
yeah, okay.
Good.
and then 3.1.c, waiver of approval process. I didn't think.
Well,
that
even
should
though
be
it's
allowed.
not defined, it's a matter of the easement holders involved in it, so it's a matter of if there's a circumstance where it's beneficial.
So that's the waiver of the
The
approval?
waiver, to waive it.
But that goes back to the commercial activities that we just stated that we don't
Right.
want.
Okay.
I mean, you might have say there's a
But it says
horseback
we,
riding event, and it's a fundraiser, and they decide
Right.
that they'd like to go through the property or something.
but the wording says in our
commercial.
sole discretion, we can waive, so it has to come to us.
Yeah. has to
It
be
isn't as if
enforced.
we're waiving something automatically.
Right.
So I think the words are okay.
Yeah. If there's anything we're proposing to do that
Right.
it's a little different, you have to weigh in and allow, or we have to come to you, so.
Right.
Okay. Page 7.
Could I just ask about the vegetation management? I was kind of hoping that Tim would be here to address that. Is that pretty customary, Doug, this language for the examples of non-commercial minor vegetation managed to selectively cut, to maintain edges of fields, to combat active fire, to remove safety hazards, to mark boundaries? All of that is fairly,
Most of this is pretty boilerplate where
okay.
we all borrow from each other at land trusts, and so this is language that we've, is pretty customary.
So you think
Yeah.
Tim, because my
Well,
comment
this is,
was-
again, we're
Tim
gonna
would be
have,
okay with that.
we're
Tim can still get a shot
we're
at this.
providing our comments, and essentially we have a second bite at the apple. It's not as if
Okay,
we don't have to come back to you again.
Yeah.
all right.
On page 7, the second line down, pre-existing structures, none exist.
Which page?
7. And what can you give us the number of what you're looking at?
Top of page 7.
Top of
Top.
page 7, second line down.
And forest cover to the extent necessary. Mine says in forest cover to the extent necessary to establish and maintain approved or pre-existing structures, okay. So,
There are no structures.
Right.
are you anticipating structures?
Well, this is because this draft includes, it's from a whole series of different transactions or whatever. So words are included in here which may not be appropriate for our situation. Unfortunately, they define structures, in the definition of structures are signs.
Right,
So whether, so it's like,
it's
all
really
right,
broad.
we have a building versus we have a sign. Now, I think we can, I'll argue the fact that this provision should be struck.
There's no signs in that place either, are there?
Not yet,
Not yet, but we would put.
But they wouldn't
trail
be
signs.
pre-existing.
no,
So
no, there
Okay.
wouldn't be.
I guess that's
Right.
agreeable.
Okay, so
Yeah.
none exist that
Yeah.
cover that
But
type of
if we
situation.
developed a kiosk, then this is just saying to prune, to make the kiosk visible. I mean, a kiosk could be a structure.
But this is talking about
That's why we
pre-existing.
need to
Approved
define
or
This is
that.
pre-existing.
Sign
Yes,
is
that's true. It does say
pre-existing.
approved or pre-existing. I didn't see.
To establish
So,
or maintain a
yes, we
approved
might need
or
that
pre-existing.
in there to,
Yeah.
so something doesn't get, so you can't read it, some important
Well, that's
information or
what-
something, so,
Mhm.
Okay, well,
yeah.
pre-existing structures, I believe, is incorrect.
We could strike pre-existing and
Right.
just keep
Okay.
approved structures, how's
Okay.
that?
Okay.
All right, on the same page, 3.3B. Again, this is covered in the later sections of the agreement. I'm suggesting that this should be deleted.
This is where I got my head swimming a bit.
I need an
You
explanation.
read something and then later on, there's another,
Right,
Thing.
it creeps into the agreement later on.
there was,
But I don't believe that 3.3B is necessary.
Okay.
Oh, and page 7, in terms of the proceeds from the sale of logging is not covered. And if this was a landowner that purchased this with his own money and had it an investment versus a organization that is relying on funding from various sources, is there a justification for us to ask for compensation for the proceeds? A portion of the proceeds or whatever?
So different than what we have now in our managed lands.
They log off and basically get compensation. It's like what we, effectively, what we're using for this
Would we still,
conservation easement is essentially money that came in from logging.
We don't own
would
it,
we
though.
technically be getting the timber tax anyways?
Yeah. I would think, we don't own it.
We don't own it.
We don't own the property.
Yes, the land trust would have to pay timber
Timber
tax.
tax, but the
so-
town would get timber.
So we would still, we
Okay.
would profit.
All right,
off
so
it
it's,
as well.
it's an issue I brought up because I was mercenary
Yeah.
and
No, we-
and wanted us to make money. But since we are going to make money anyway, so it's okay.
So what
I
was
mean,
the conclusion?
we can work in and make more money, that's good.
It wasn't mentioned in here where the proceeds go, so I guess
Right.
it's-
Right.
you stay silent about that. Yes.
We don't
But
own
the
it. proceeds
proceeds go to the landowner, the owner, and the town receives the timber
Well,
tax.
is that the case when it's a non-profit
We
organization?
had a timber sale a while ago and we had to pay the yield tax.
Okay.
It's the
Yeah.
same, so, yeah. We're not that non-profit.
All right. Okay.
More than
Alright.
what they're pound of flesh.
Yeah.
I'm all the way to page 13 unless somebody else has got some comments.
Um,
Page 11 is interesting in 3.4A,
right,
which I didn't capture, but I have it underlined here.
I did ask that question, who can,
This is, again, allow for construction of roads, utilities, buildings, structures in the conservation area. That provision, I think is too broad.
So you're on 11, you
Where-
said?
where are you?
3.4A,
Okay.
page 11.
Yep.
I just wondered who could cut the firewood if the town, I mean, the owner can cut the firewood, the town can't cut the firewood. Right?
That's-
And
that's-
so I was suggesting that rather than say they could do 10 quarts per year, I was gonna knock that down to 5 quarts per year.
Well, I don't know why we're permitting
Any of it?
the landlord to, the landowner to go in and cut wood.
Yeah,
I don't-
well, we wouldn't be cutting it for firewood,
No,
that's
it'd
for
be
sure.
timber,
Right.
we'd be doing it for timber.
Yeah, or you might cut firewood as part of a timber sale, but that's under management.
Well, it's
plan, and
for
that's a different
domestic use
story, so-
as firewood,
Yeah, well, we
cutting
don't-
for,
We don't need it to heat our office, let's put it that way, so we
Okay.
probably won't care
So-
about that.
So,
well,
can I-
the provision is, construction of allowed roads, utilities, buildings, and structures on the conservation area. Now, since we haven't permitted many of these things, we're silent on allowed roads. We haven't talked about buildings or structures or any of that. So, do we really want to have that part of the forest management plan or anything like that?
Yeah, I'd like that whole paragraph to go away.
You would?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of good things in it.
Are you planning to have structures? Is that something that would be in your
Because
sights?
signs and, you know, if you had to put a bog bridge in or something in a
Well-
place, you know, then that becomes a structure, so you gotta be
Well,
more
I
specific.
think it's a matter of, yes, we ought to have a vote in that. So the easement holder should say, look, you know, if you want to build a building, we ought to have a voice in that. If you want to put utilities in for some reason. Now, further language in this thing says there aren't any utilities. We're not putting in any water pumps, we're not putting in any
Right, some of it does.
any of that, we're not taking care of sanitation, and all of that. So, this is the issue that I've had with reading this thing, is that there are provisions in this thing which don't reflect what goes on in other segments of the agreement.
And
So,
in this paragraph also, Ralph, I mean, as far as the parking lots, are we going to permit the building of a parking lot in there? You know, other trailheads don't have parking lots
Mhm.
that we have.
By parking lot,
Some do.
obviously we had our annual meeting outing there and you parked under the power line.
Right.
That
Yeah.
is technically a parking lot probably, but how much you improve it so it doesn't erode.
I mean, that's to that, are we gonna make that a parking lot, or are we gonna block it
Yeah,
so
would
it
be
does
more
not
of a
become a parking lot?
designated-
It has,
Trailhead, so
From-
you need to
from-
park somewhere, so,
We need to
yeah.
have parking.
You
We
do
do need to have some
parking.
parking. I think we do.
Leadline Road, you have like one car pull off for each one of those trailheads. You could have the same thing on Forest Pines Road. What I've found from the police standpoint, you put in a parking lot that is off the road, that is not seen, we are gonna have nothing but criminal activity. There's already plenty of it going on in that same vicinity. So it's just a problem to think about and foresee prior to getting into that
It
situation.
is, you don't see it, it is, you
It's a
know,
good
no, that's a good point.
Yep.
Right.
You have
Never would've
fence
thought of
and you
that.
can't
The Pine Barrens
be
is,
parking all over
Right.
the roads, so
So-
I mean, you
For
gotta
people's
catch
property.
22.
Yeah.
well, it would also help lower the foot traffic to preserve the property. If you-
perhaps a
if you
lead
don't have
into
20 car
3-4A would be something about acknowledgement about the easement holder has the ability to consent or approve these actions. Because we don't know what's happening 10 years from now,
Yeah.
in terms of, there are certain things that may be attractive in terms of what people want and all of that. So I really almost don't want to preclude all of this, but I don't want to have this being the ability of the landowner to put up or incorporate utilities and all these other things, which, by the way, aren't included in the for other language.
Why can't we just ask that require a waiver, that a waiver be issued?
Whatever, consent or waiver or approval, same thing, essentially.
And I also had a question, like with a bog bridge or something, will Upper Saco Valley maintain that bog bridge, or is it gonna fall? Because the town doesn't want the liability of having a bridge like that. And so who's gonna take responsibility for maintenance of a feature like that?
The landowner, I presume.
Yes, yeah. I mean, stuff we're putting in is supposed to benefit the community, it's
Right,
not something that we're doing for our own edification,
Right.
so, I mean,
right.
we gotta be in sync on what's a benefit and what's a problem, I guess. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
I'm just getting at, I mean, that, and if you have a 20-car parking lot, you're gonna have more foot traffic in there than I think the property should have in the aspect of preserving it. And I mean, you look at Diana's Bath and how beaten up that is compared to some of our trails off of Lead Mine and those other trails. So,
But if you have an event, sometimes you have an outing and you've got, 20 people there and then.
Again, I'm suggesting that we consent to this, and the circumstances at the time did dictate the action.
I'd
So,
like to ask Mark, when we have Old Home Week events and we have a trail walk, like on the Wold property or the Goodwin property, is there ever, there doesn't seem to be issues on parking, right? I mean, not that you've noticed? When we have events for Old Home Week,
Yeah,
for a walk
yeah.
on the Wold property or the Goodwin property
Yeah.
or West Branch, you don't recall issues with parking at those, do you? I mean, there's usually 15 people, it's not like you have a lot, but,
No, but those are daytime organized outings. Isn't it?
that's why I'm asking, because that's what
That's all we have.
Doug is referring to. Perhaps that something like that might be taking place on the Chain of Ponds property, there might be a walk or some event. You're not planning weddings, I don't know. I guess there were some things
There was
that
something
came
there
to my
about
mind
weddings.
that were mentioned, like that you would be doing a commercial thing to rent a piece of a property, or if you were to put a pavilion there or something, that you would rent it out for weddings or things like that. Are you thinking about that kind? No, okay. All right, well,
We got enough to
that
do.
clarifies. Well, but that's
Yeah.
what comes out
Right,
when you're
yeah.
reading some of this.
Yeah.
You think, oh my gosh, that would be a way to fundraise, because
Yeah, and-
fundraising
and
is
the-
important.
And the point was brought, we're not a usual landowner that wants all of these private rights. So, this is geared toward that, so
right,
it has that flavor to it that is kind of inappropriate, I agree with you, so.
But
yeah.
you're a nonprofit, and
Yeah.
fundraising is important,
Yes, it is,
so that's why I'm bringing that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay, on page 12, 3.4, paragraph 3.4C1, there is a provision for orchards.
That would be, to me, a commercial thing. That's why I was asking, what's commercial, what's non-commercial? It Just,
Planting fruit trees for wildlife is not commercial, but that's not an orchard either, so.
Well,
So I think we
Okay,
could,
so
just
Yeah.
fruit trees.
suggestion is to consider that.
yeah.
The important one
Where was
is
This.
3.5A subdivision.
They can't do that anyway.
Oh.
I won't let them.
Yeah, this
Well,
whole section.
again, it's one of those things that, we're looking at the integrity of the property in terms of, I don't think we should be permitting, and leases and all these other things, joint
Yeah.
ownership and all that, so that paragraph,
All that stuff,
I think should,
Who's gonna be the property owner?
Land trust,
the land trust,
The land trust, the Upper Saco.
yes.
yeah.
And what's your mission statement the whole question is, what do you do as
Land for
property
community
owners?
benefits, that was our short version, yes.
Land
So,
for community
Okay.
it's,
benefit.
so,
So this document would be more if Mark Olson decided to sell a easement on my property.
right, exactly.
Yeah, if we go belly up as a land trust, then the Attorney General's office assures that we roll into some other conservation entity. And so it's all, it doesn't mean that the land's gonna suddenly go out on the private market, that's.
Well, it will, but it could,
That's.
but it still has an easement on it.
It's set up so that, we can't sell it for a trade land or something and get money for it and get a whole third-party owner.
Like
It's not,
Nature Conservancy does that at times.
they do, but this isn't
And
an
you can't
appropriate
do that.
piece for that. Well, we could, we have in certain cases, we've been given a house, for instance, and,
You don't want
need a house, so we, yeah.
Okay, so,
I have a question.
sure.
In this particular case, because this is an unusual circumstance with a nonprofit and a municipality, could the municipality be given right of first refusal if it were to come up that this property would be sold? That this property would need to be sold? Could that be included?
Yes, I think it
I
could be.
mean, for consideration?
The LCHIP, for instance, has their fingers in this for funding, and some of these other entities have provisions where they get a bite of the apple too because of their funding if something bad happens.
They want
So,
something
but-
back.
But anyway, so,
And the land trust will own it and all these other funding entities will disappear.
right, except that
and-
there will be some things in there, if things go south, then we've
Right.
got kind of the state behind it too, so. It's not necessarily that they'd have ownership, but they may say, well, look, we put some money into this, and if there's any money to be had, we may, that it goes somehow. Like I said, it really can't go out of conservation, it's protected,
It
so
it
that's.
can't go out of conservation,
Right.
but it could get sold to someone.
Could go into
And
different.
it could be a person that's not reputable, and I'm just saying, I don't know if there's a place in a conservation easement or
Yeah.
something like
Oh,
that, but
let me,
worth asking.
Yeah, so right at first
Well,
refusal.
I don't know if we'd
It's
want
worthwhile
that.
They don't
pursuing.
need it,
Yeah.
giving the 230.
230,000, yeah.
Not like we're gonna be able to come up with that
Well,
kind of money.
I think there is unanimous agreement that that section should be eliminated.
So 3.5A you're talking about?
Right.
It's 3.5A in its entirety. 3.5B on page 13. It says that nothing, you can't put up any structures, temporary or permanent. However, you reserve the rights under 3.5B. And 3.5B has issues related to structure, and all that, including a fence and sign and all that kind of stuff. And it says in 3.5B2, you list all the structures in the conservation area. I'm suggesting that you reconsider I believe that the lead into 3.5B is appropriate. However, you delete the words, except that the landlord reserves the following rights set forth in 3B. So, and the definition of the structure, essentially, there are no structures except by this definition, signs that may be there.
Maybe rock wall.
So the whole thing here is in my mind, in terms of it should be deleted. You can have a definition for structure saying that there's signs or whatever, but reconsider 3.5B. And even 3.5B4, you look at all these dwellings, apartment houses, overnight accommodation, dormitories, residential driveways, telecommunications towers, underground storage tanks, all this stuff. This is way beyond what is contemplated. The whole thing is extraneous verbiage as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, because lawyers like to give examples.
Well,
Some
I
of them
don't
are
care
wacky.
about the examples, or whatever, but
So-
I don't think,
Yeah,
fine tune the term structures into something that I think makes sense.
I had a question on the term paved trail, and I was just wondering, is it customary to have paved trails, and if it would be, and maybe that's something that the Conservation Commission.
Which one is that? Where are you?
It's in 3.5.B1. it says a structure may be preliminarily two-dimensional, such as a paved trail, road, or parking lot fence or a sign.
Right, okay.
Or three-dimensional, and I'm just wondering if there are any paved surfaces to be had for any reason, would it be acceptable for them to be constructed as with permeable material? And I don't know, maybe that's something that is ironed out, that you come to the Conservation Commission and say, as the easement holder, we want to put a paved trail there, we say, okay, we want it to be a permeable material,
Right.
Yeah.
not something
Well, the
that's.
thing is, what I'm suggesting is that they redo this whole section, which eliminates a lot of this. So they really have to express what they really want in terms of structures.
Okay.
So
And definition
in
of
the
sign.
language that they'll offer is really something that addresses your issue, Noreen.
Okay,
All right?
yeah.
How do we feel about solar? I mean, I think there'd be a lot of trees cut to put in a meaningful solar array. But if there was an appropriate space and it could go to the benefit of the town, I just don't know if that would be something down the road that would be considered, or do we just, it will impact the area pretty significantly, so I'm not sure that it would be considered conservation. I just don't know. I mean, it's for a conservation effort, but
Yeah.
Again, this requires us to think about what a definition of a structure is. So if we have language in here that says that under certain circumstances, we will consider solar arrays, that's fine. But in terms of what is existing here, I don't think it's
I
appropriate.
agree.
Okay? Okay, page,
14.
oh, 3.5B3, well, we're talking about removing the whole thing, so I don't believe.
Or structuring it to something more
Restructuring,
definitive.
restructuring the
it.
language in this
Yeah.
provision.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
you know, we will probably, we have an attorney who, he actually is in Maine, but this is all he does is,
Okay.
you know, conservation stuff, and he might have some ideas of how to streamline this, and,
Right.
so we have somebody that we don't muck it up amongst ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Something we wish we hadn't done, so.
In the very last paragraph, it does talk about bridges and culverts and
Yeah.
gates and stream crossings and things like that, which probably should still be there.
Yeah,
Oh, it keeps going on in terms of recreational structures and all of this, and overnight use of facilities and no utility lines. And even covers, notwithstanding the foregoing, structures including golf courses, golf ranges, swimming pools, all this other stuff. ATFs and racetracks and all this other stuff, aircraft pads are prohibited. This is all, again, overdoing the whole provision. So 3.5 is a problem as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and I also, backing up a little bit on 3.5B6 about hunting, and are they gonna be allowing hunting stands, or are we allowing hunting at all, or trapping, or
Again, it's,
any of that I,
it's covered again. We'll
Oh,
walk
okay.
through it.
Okay.
Is the ATVs covered again, Ralph?
Yeah, it comes up
I
again.
think ATVs are.
3.5 is incredible in terms of what is in here. It is incredible in terms of what it covers. So I think we'd be happy if we get another version of 3.5.
okay, yeah.
Hopefully.
The whole 3.5, so you're going through
The whole section 3.5,
all 3.5.
all of 3.5.
We're gonna simplify it, let's put it that way.
Right.
It's-
And it's like, in 3.5B6, we're talking about low-impact recreation
Right.
and all of that. Hunting stands, just as you mentioned, hunting stands, barriers, low fences, and all of that. So,
But how are they gonna know what our opinion is for that? I mean, you're saying, you're asking him to streamline it or restructure it, but there's some things I think we do need to talk about amongst ourselves as far as,
well, I think we are going to talk about what are permitted activities.
okay,
All
okay,
right, so
all right.
I hopefully, if we aren't, we're gonna talk
Come
about
back.
it again.
We'll circle back.
All right.
So,
Yeah, because we had ATV here,
I know.
and that's a question for a lot of people.
I know.
in 335C2, you have a management plan, which is not defined. I have no idea what a management plan is, even though we're deleting this or restructuring this thing. But just to call your attention that
Page 15.
it's not defined as a forest management plan or whatever it is. It calls out for a management plan. Okay?
That's another 10 pages.
Sometimes,
So,
sometimes we have, it's more of a multi-use plan
All
that
right.
is broader
Well-
than forestry, and I don't know whether it includes a wildlife plan and other things, so but
All right.
I'll find out what the intent is.
whatever the
Yeah.
intent is
Yeah.
of the management plan for that. Making huge amount of progress here with respect to 3.5. 3, page 16, 3.7.
So just on page 16, so the 3.9.a, is that customary? I mean, the landowner shall not create or convey any right-of-way easement or use restriction into, under, or over. I understand what it's saying, I just didn't know if this is something that is this is stuff that has to go in a conservation easement, or,
Well, I have a clarification on that particular point.
Oh,
But let's go to 3.7 first, which is
Oh,
the
okay.
paragraph ahead of that.
okay, page
Um,
16.
3.7
Yeah.
says, and this is a classic in terms of creating confusion as far as I'm concerned. Except as may be permitted elsewhere in this easement, or except may be permitted by prior approval of the easement holder. There is no, where is the dumping provided for in the agreement? So the words except as provided for elsewhere in this agreement should be struck. It's not provided for, I can't read it anywhere in the
Nowhere
agreement.
else it's referenced.
So again, this adds to confusion in terms of trying to find it in, reading the edge of the paper to find out where it is. So it's not there.
Yeah.
I didn't pick that up, so good job, Ralph.
I spent a lot of time reading
I
this.
know you have.
And 3.9A has the same thing, or as provided elsewhere in this easement. It's not provided there.
Mhm.
I'm not sure the example is necessary. The notion I have is to create an example, and that's what is covered there. There could be other things that are provided for. If you can find out where it is provided elsewhere in the easement,
challenge.
please let me know, because I tried to find it.
Use a word search. I couldn't use a word search.
Can you identify the purpose of these?
Okay.
In the front. It's the very first.
All right. Okay.
I guess
39D,
39B, is that where you are?
17, on page 17,
Oh, back on page 16,
yes.
39B, current use not affected. I didn't understand what that meant, because it said at the end, as may be amended from time to time, shall be exempt from this section 3.9, does that mean that if the current use laws change over time, that they'll be applied to this easement as revised, or are they going to be held to whatever's in the easement at the time of the signing of the easement? I just didn't understand what that meant.
So we keep, this isn't current use assessment, you know, you understand that, so we would keep it there. This is something that's technically, we don't have to pay property taxes.
Technically, right.
Other towns
Yeah.
say, yes, you do, but if you go higher up, many towns have been proven wrong. However, we pay in lieu of taxes, so, everywhere. So if we're in current use, then we'll pay as though we were any other landowner. And so that, I mean, that's our policy.
Right, so
But I
that's
think
just-
there's, nothing in here is meant to affect that current use. And the other one, conservation restriction assessment is another thing. It's kind of part of current use. If you don't have enough acreage to qualify for current use, you can get qualified through that. So it's just a general statement that's, this isn't meant to mess with that because it's state law, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
39D on page 17. The words are "may otherwise have certain rights." What are they?
And that would be if we owned abutting property as a regular landowner, we can't use this to do something on our other land.
Okay. Well,
But that's
be
not-
specific.
It doesn't apply to us.
Be specific,
exactly,
because
so, yeah,
I'm not sure what certain rights are.
yeah.
So,
Again, this is, really doesn't apply to this situation.
okay, so
yeah,
delete whatever
Yeah.
words are. 311, here is where we're talking about what are permitted uses.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you on 311E is inconsistent with 311A. It's just a general comment that the two don't play right. So,
Yeah.
however, let's go through 311.
Yeah.
And this is what I think is probably one of the most important things we're talking about tonight. All this other stuff is technical. In 311A, it's at a low impact, without limitation, walking, hiking, nature observation and study, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, fishing, hunting, trapping, horseback riding, and non-motorized biking. Any issues with any of those?
So we are going to allow hunting.
I would hope so.
I mean, I have,
Yeah.
We have to because
Yeah.
of L-chip,
Well,
especially.
what about the trapping though?
that is the only issue for me.
Yeah,
Is
and
It's an
I
issue
don't-
for me.
There are way too many beavers. We were
Well,
doing beaver control up and nobody traps anymore anyway.
That was my next statement, was nobody's trapping.
Nobody traps anymore.
Well,
Well, why don't we have trapping
could-
as part of a maintenance program?
well, that's what I'm thinking, maybe under
As
supervision of.
opposed to having people throw traps all over the place.
It's
Okay.
like trapping and releasing kind of is, I don't know how they do beaver control. Like the state, when they had the railroad tracks covered, I don't know if we can get into the middle of that, because,
Well,
No.
trapping it could be one of these things that could be a maintenance issue.
yeah,
Doesn't that maintain water quality?
Well, let's
I'm not sure.
let's reserve on the
Yes,
word
yeah.
trapping. Horseback
Could I
riding,
just
do
make
we-
a suggestion, though, is that perhaps think about that it would be under the supervision of New Hampshire Fish and Game, so that there would be perhaps a time period when that could happen, and there would be a signage, don't go into this area, because you don't want to harm people's animals. You want to make sure that if you're doing it at a certain time, that you're.
You have to have a license and you have to follow the rules to do any of this.
Right.
Well,
Trapping is
Right.
regulated.
So
by
that's
the-
why I'm suggesting a separate provision for trapping,
do
okay?
do you remember, Ralph, that we were approached years ago by someone who wanted to trap in the Goodwin Forest?
Right,
And we, I mean, you, really, I don't think we could say no, but we did not say no, but we asked the signage be put up because those traps will kill a dog.
right.
So if people are running their dogs in there, they need to know that there's a threat to the dogs in that area. That's my concern, is that domestic animals will be harmed. I have personal issues with trapping, but those are not my issue. My issue is that we're opening these lands for public use, and then we put in someone's traps and then their dogs get killed.
Well, the trapping is a generic term, other than beaver. We're focused on beavers. But we
Yes,
could be
other-
they could be trapping
Bears?
all sorts of
Bears.
other animals. So
Yeah.
let's focus on the word trapping. And if we wanna have a provision for maintenance of trapping for beavers, I'm suggesting we have a separate provision for that.
Right.
And
No, I think it should be trapping within the,
So many feet off the marked trail.
within the state RSA's.
Okay,
I mean, even to have a tree stand now, and I'm not a hunter and I'm not a trapper and I'm not an ATVer, but those people have rights too. But, and their money as well, but even to have a tree stand, you have to have the landowner's permission. You have to have the written permission from the landowner. To bait bear, you need to have
I was
written.
gonna say, can we not have bear baiting? I mean,
We can discuss that, but,
It is guarded against because you can't be in there without permission. And we got a request for the Dundee Community Forest for bear baiting. And of course, we're gonna say no, but we have to say no in a way that, why are we denying it? And it's because of the bad things that happen when you put big
I mean,
barrels of
somebody
stuff out
could bait
in
the
woods.
bear that was in the back of my truck yesterday morning eating my garbage.
Yes.
Or the two I saw yesterday afternoon when I was out for a run. There are way too many bears out there.
They're very,
can we have no hunting with bear dogs? You know, that's another.
okay. All right, so
It's a-
trapping is an issue.
Yeah.
Would you use your ingenuity to get past
And
this?
hunting is certain kinds of
And
hunting.
certain
Traps
kinds
in
of
the ditch
hunting.
by the
All
road.
right. Horseback, do we want horses running through this place?
They are low impact. I mean, they're.
If you have one horse regularly, if you have an event with 20 horses, that's
Right.
not gonna be low impact.
I mean, people trailer their horses and
Again, they have to have a parking area.
spend the day to do that, that's one thing. I mean, it's not a terrible impact, but if it's repeated over certain areas, it becomes high impact.
And I don't have a problem with horse riding.
Is it mentioned in any other property that we own?
I think we do allow it in some places we don't.
Is it specified, so?
Yeah, I think like on the Wold property, horseback riding is denied. I thought it was all right on the Goodwin Forest, but I could be wrong, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So there's no consistency within the town of Madison about horseback riding?
Well, I think on the Wold property, the person who granted us the land set the restrictions.
Okay.
And then I think the same thing on the Barclay property, the people who donated the land set the restrictions. So, I think that's
Other
why
than
it's inconsistent.
Those two examples, you could construe that horseback riding is permitted.
Well, I think one is and one isn't. So again, I'm not, I mean, I don't
Okay.
wanna be, I'm not 100% sure, but I know we've had this discussion over the years and,
Yeah. Well,
and it needs to be considered. Where it said non-motorized bicycling, does that mean that motorized bicycling is okay?
Well, non-motorizing means,
Right, but they're
It's
on
okay.
motorized bikes,
There are
These are
motorized.
permitted things.
right.
these are permitted things.
So-
These are non-motorized bicycles,
These are
we don't
permitted.
want motorized
Motorized.
bicycles.
Does that mean
I mean,
like-
do you want the bikes with the electric assist, which isn't really considered motorized?
Well, my assumption is non-motorized means that you're pedaling it.
And you have to pedal.
Right.
You're old.
But those big fat tire bikes are pretty tough. I mean,
Yeah.
they do a pounding on the trail, the fat tire bikes.
Okay.
So again, it's, you know, it's not one thing, it's like 6 different variations.
The Nature Conservancy in the Pine Barren forbids horseback riding and bicycles.
And bicycles.
Simple enough then.
Yeah, I'm fine with it, but I just,
And they have a permeable trail, handicap trail.
Well, again, it's one of those things, do we have an opinion that we want to offer in terms of horseback riding and bicycling?
You folks will have the final say, don't you, Doug, on whether it's in or out?
No, we have,
I
To come to an
think
agreement.
this is the
we're in this
easement,
together
so
here,
we're the
We have to
ones that are,
We're,
we're the ones that are
we're gonna
expressing.
say yea and nay.
Doug, what's your opinion on those things?
Again, I'm not a bicyclist either, so, and, but I know a lot of people who are, and because mountain biking is huge. And,
Right.
you know, wheeled vehicles do cause erosion and, you know, ATV being an extreme example, but,
Right.
you put a motor behind it and it gets more extreme, but, so it's, like you said, it's the use, and I think you need the ability to shut it down if it's overuse. I think that's what's
That was
important.
something I was
think.
gonna say, is there
No.
gonna be some areas which get intensive use, and you may have to manage that
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just shut it down for a while it
Yeah.
recovers.
Right, yeah.
I mean, and for people who are out walking, you don't wanna be run over by bicycles or horses.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
If someone's dog spooks a horse.
This is a big
Yeah.
property.
Yeah,
right,
Could
If I had a
it
horse,
be
I'd ride it.
restricted, could it be, could there be consideration for restricting it to certain trails or something like that?
well, and again, that's where this, like a multi-use management plan comes into areas where you don't want any of this happening.
Right.
Right,
They're
okay.
delicate,
Mhm.
sensitive areas, so that will probably come into play here around a lot of the ponds.
How about if we add the words horseback riding and motorized bicycling in permitted areas?
In what?
In
Permitted areas, which means that we will
Yeah.
permit that
So we gotta define those areas eventually.
later on.
in the management
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's good.
What about hunting?
It's, has to be basically open because of our funding.
Okay.
in the state.
311C. The lead in. Landowner reserves the right to use and allow the use of motorized vehicles.
Got search and rescue, fire.
That is qualified. Yeah.
Well, it says that as you don't rut the property or create an impairment to attributes. Then it goes on to describe, in the event motorized vehicles by third parties cause. I think the landowner reserves the right to use and allow the use of motorized vehicles only on existing improved roads. So you're not using for going elsewhere other than on existing roads.
But if it was for property management, if there was a big, I don't know, a big windfall, or if there was something
Well, that's
that,
provided for, but in terms of, this is a blanket statement, they could drive anywhere, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, they wanna cut 10 cords of wood somewhere, and they need
and it would be cheaper.
a truck and a trailer and all this other stuff, and that is essentially permitted.
Yeah, but that's not something this landowner does, I assume.
Well, it's in the prior language, they had the ability to cut 10 cords of wood.
Did we take that out?
I think we did.
Yeah, we can take that out, but, I mean, I'm saying these are things that,
But
you know, if you get say you got, you know, tremendous, all the trees bent over and you need, you know,
Well, in
professional
terms
help
of,
in there.
let's
you know,
then describe, then change the words.
Yeah,
Change the words for
Emergency management or
the
something.
forest management, and all that. You could just say use motorized vehicles for events such as, you know, down trees and.
well, that's property management.
Property
Because
management,
it's
so
a big
it's
sum.
included in the property management. So
Yeah.
I guess the only issue was, for me, was that it was a allow ability to drive anywhere on Sunday. If you wanted to do a picnic, you could drive anywhere on the property.
Yeah.
That's not property management.
Well, it's,
Yeah.
in 311C, it says you can do that.
For property management, it's qualified, that's my point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the
How about
specific
if-
use it's allowed for.
No, for
If a-
recreation.
If a
Okay.
hunter,
Not
Maybe
recreation.
I'm
if a
overstating.
hunter
Okay.
had a moose permit and needed to get the moose out, I mean,
All
would they
right.
be able to get a vehicle in to get
No.
it out?
Okay, so maybe I'm overstating things.
Okay.
Perhaps I
Okay,
am.
no, so-
311D, snowmobiles.
Are we even able to have a say on corridor 19 where that's federal
No,
railroad
it's not
tracks
even
or
on the
not?
land,
That's,
so it's
yeah.
kind of like,
that's what I mean is.
the one
that
thing
control
that we
anyways.
were wondering about, because they've used the road off Forest Pines Road to get in there and fix all the latest haul-in ballast in the railroad and repair everything, whether that's something that, you know, the state really needs and should be provided for to be able to access that. I don't know.
Okay.
Because that is a pretty significant
Like used to run
corridor,
trains.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Somerville
yeah, it's
corridor.
an interstate type thing, yes.
So,
We know firsthand that the snowmobiles will go off the trail and have come up close to our property, and we know they go on the other side over, on the far side slope. So once they're in there, you can't control them.
we, on the Goodwin Forest, we have put up signs that say, you know, or the snowmobile club has, you know, please stay on the trail, please respect, you know,
Okay.
big X's. So I'm hoping that maybe that kind of signage can go up to try to keep people where they're supposed to be and not, because I think it's been a little bit of a free-for-all in there for the last few years.
That sign's a structure though, gotta be careful.
I know.
They police themselves really pretty well, though.
Do they? Well, I understand that they probably do, but there's still, stuff happens.
The biggest thing is adjacent landowners who are used to going out the back door and, you know, snowmobiling and ATV. So,
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you like to do with 311D, if anything?
Snowmobiles, I don't, what can we do?
Okay, so 311D, we're leaving that alone?
I would just leave it strictly to the corridor.
Okay. Which is, that's what it says essentially.
Right.
Those skidoers are way too friendly. They irritate me.
But Doug was saying that the state has access through the Chain of Ponds property to do maintenance on that corridor. So is that something that we're going to have thoughts about, or I don't know if we can stop that. We have to allow the maintenance of the
Well,
corridor, I would think.
we could stop it, but
I
they're
was gonna say, they
doing
can
it.
access it from the Silver Lake Post Office but I think that could be a case-by-case situation where they have to approach us and we approve it or deny it.
Because they have to still get landowner
I
property.
know they did just haul in a whole bunch of stuff, and they definitely went in that road, and they repaired the road to do it, so.
But they would have to ask you for permission once this goes
They
through.
would have to, but they didn't ask anybody in this case, I don't think, so.
Okay,
So
They just
we
assumed
we
they
were
could do
trying to maybe formalize something with them, because they kind of control the crossing rights there. And we want to make sure that they don't come in and say, oh, you don't have a right to cross here for anything in the future. And so we were looking at a little, well, you know, maybe we could
Be more partner-like.
let you access it as long as you don't interfere with our crossing there, so.
And
That's
the-
just a thought, just,
Yeah, and the other side with the concern about the snowmobiles getting off trail and whatnot is once it is owned by you guys and us as an easement, Fish and Game has an easier time enforcing things than a private landowner that allows it and basically doesn't
Oh,
care that it happens.
so Fish and Game has
So,
more leverage.
Yeah, so if we have a landowner that is strictly against it, Fish and Game has a victim in this case and can enforce the snowmobile situations, so.
Okay. 311E on page 18. This is L-chip language, needs to be updated. Now, these are the, what are called minimum deed requirements. What is the L-chip?
Sorry, where are you getting on?
Page 18,
Page
Yeah.
18.
Top of the page.
top of the page, 311E.
Oh, minimum. They impose language that they make us put in either the conservation easement or in some cases in our deed. It's a restriction in a deed. We have tried to modify it to be more, user-friendly or something that applies better. And going against the state attorney general's office is a pretty hard sell. So sometimes we are
Right.
stuck with this because they're funders. So if we got something specific, we can suggest, but I can't
Right,
guarantee. we
well,
can
the only
fit
thing
it,
is,
so,
is that
yeah.
in the fourth bullet,
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're dealing with the language that we just dealt
Talked
with
about.
Yeah,
beforehand, and I'm not sure it's consistent or inconsistent, but it only mentions camping, and in fact, I don't think we even talked about camping.
No,
So, that's the other issue of, is that permissible?
there is another place where it talks about overnight stays. There was something in here about the overnight, there being
yeah, and I mean, then you're into the thing, well, what if, Boy Scouts, Tin Mountain decides they'd like to have an outing and they actually camp out there on an occasion? Is that, if it's in an appropriate place, do we, I don't know,
Well, the issue with camping is that it's overnight, and then now we enter into olive
Sanitation.
trees and all this
Yeah,
other
yeah.
stuff,
It
and
says you
water,
retain the right.
and all of that, so,
And as soon as you have one organization that does it, everybody else walking by sees that, oh, somebody else has camped here, I can camp here. So,
but am I reading this correctly that says that snowmobiling is not permitted?
Notwithstanding to the above, landowner returns the right to post.
Or otherwise prohibit
yeah,
Public
it's not a blanket prohibit.
use of any or all of it.
It just says,
Activities that are not low impact recreation, including but not limited to all of
see,
those things.
I think we ought to make the language in this provision consistent with what we said before in the earlier provision.
If possible, I mean, L-chip may not approve it,
No,
right?
we make ours
Right.
consistent with LG.
Oh,
we can try.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
What is the status of ATVs now?
probably not gonna be allowed, and again, it's gonna be imposed by funders. There's one that we're going after, is the drinking water and groundwater trust fund.
okay,
And because of all of the, delicate sensitive areas in there, that's probably gonna be one that we're not gonna be able to
to allow,
permit, so.
right,
Cycling
Not
back
that we
to
want anyway, but I'm just saying.
yeah.
all right, cycling back to 311A and dealing with the fourth bullet in the LTIP language. We need to deal with camping as an issue there, as to whether or not we want camping included in our definition.
I don't think so, because that means fires and,
yeah,
no
No,
camping,
no camping.
no camping,
food waste,
right.
trash, bear
Trash.
trash.
And are we gonna put up porta potties, but they probably wouldn't be near the camping area? So,
Well, the access to water and everything else, I mean,
no, I think no camping.
and sanitation issues with
Right.
removal of trash and all that kind of stuff. So opening up that kind of thing.
Right.
Was camping,
It's mentioned in 311, in
311.
the fourth bullet, but it's not mentioned in
Right.
311.
But it isn't in the other, that's what you're
Right,
saying, yeah, okay.
right.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so
So no, yeah,
we could be silent to it, but then it opens up the issue.
yeah,
Right.
right.
Yep, I get you, yep, thanks.
All right, so,
Address that and say no camp.
all right. So we're gonna,
And so we're gonna say no bikes and no horseback riding too, right?
right,
Well, I thought we were gonna say that it would be restricted to
Oh, right.
areas.
You're right,
Yeah,
you're right,
yeah,
say
I think
that.
this,
That's right,
Restricted to specified
yeah,
trails.
Yeah,
you're right, you're right.
okay. So where are we?
Sorry, we were just having, we had said that the horseback riding and bikes would be in restricted areas or
Right.
limited.
could be permitted in
Could be
restricted
permitted,
areas.
Right, that's exactly what we said.
Yeah.
But in terms of camping, we're now saying no.
No.
Camping,
Okay,
because of fire.
And waste and,
waste
Sanitation and all
yeah,
those other
trash,
things.
trash,
Okay.
yeah.
okay. Eighteen.
Too far from the C store.
before we
Where they get a
move
bucket
off
beer.
of page 18,
Especially if the whole course.
I was wondering if we could, I think when we give that 213,000, we need to get a right of first refusal. I think that's the way it's written, in the way we can give the money. We have to get something for it.
We're getting an easement though.
Oh, we are getting the easement, that may cover that.
Okay,
And then the other thing it said, we needed, easement holder, landowners shall notify the easement holder in writing within 10 days. I think that should be at least 90 days, if not 120 days. Because we wouldn't be able to move in 10 days to do anything.
No,
okay.
Notified doesn't mean we have to make a decision.
No, but
notified, we should be
But if-
notified,
we should be notified.
not in 10 days, if they're gonna sell the property.
What section are you?
I'm on page
Four.
18,
Four, on page
Four.
18.
subsequent transfer taxes and maintenance. 4.1 on page 18.
Right, you're saying why is transfer
Okay,
division
I'm still
permitted?
I'm still on
Oh.
page 17. but
Okay.
Okay, we
Oh,
go.
oh, I'm
Um,
sorry.
And this is motorized vehicles again. So,
oh, now you're back on, okay.
I'm back on that.
It's okay.
Who are the third parties? This is in the,
Well, if it's unauthorized, they come in and do a whole lot of damage, then, you know, we might have to bring a dump truck in or something to fill in ruts, I don't know. And
Okay.
so it allows repair of damage done by third parties, in the sense of it's usually unauthorized, I guess.
Okay.
How about search and rescue? I mean,
Yeah,
if somebody
All right, third
was
party. All
reported
right.
lost or
Okay.
something,
I'll back off that. Page 18,
four.
18.4. I have essentially, why is this permitted to begin with?
Well,
It's landowner shall have notified the easement of 10 days, transfer of title, any division or ownership permitted hereby. I don't know whether, I thought we eliminated the ability to do this in a prior section.
Well, again, like I said, something might happen that, you know, the title's got to be transferred to another organization or something, and.
I guess
so-
the issue for me is that this has tremendous latitude. You could decide tomorrow that you want to divide the property up and all of that.
Well, we can't subdivide it.
No.
But you could have joint ownership, that's what it's talking about earlier. That's not considered a subdivision if you've got two owners, like,
Okay.
for instance, so.
but I was just saying, I thought we should get more than 10 days notice.
Yes, that's what,
Okay,
was
fine.
being on, so
But
look
also,
into that.
that right of first refusal,
Refusal.
I think we need to have that in order to
Yeah.
be able to give the $213,000 because of the way the RSA is written, we need to have something. Now, if getting the easement covers that, that's fine. But before, we always asked for right of first refusal, and that was acceptable.
Well, that was on Nature Conservancy's land around,
Cook's Pond, but we still have to get something for giving the money. We gave 25,000, they gave us the right of first refusal. We couldn't give the 25,000 without getting something.
right,
So,
but we're getting
so if the easement covers something that we're getting, then I think we're good.
yeah.
We don't need
It's
the
a
right
good
of first
suggestion.
refusal.
We'll look into it, whether that.
Right.
can
The
be-
right of first
Yeah,
refusal,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's, I think it's worth looking into.
Yeah.
Marcia, bear in mind, we don't have a lot of money.
No, we don't.
But we might, if we had some time to get organized, we might be able to salvage it, but I don't think,
Okay, all right.
my understanding from the Attorney General is that if there was any sort of transfer, it would be to a like organization. It wouldn't be somebody who would be
Okay.
having any commercial, so it would just be a matter of transferring it to a like-minded, similar organization that meets all the criteria of what we're doing now.
Yes.
Okay. My last point, and I am done, unless anybody else has any other comments, is 5 on page 19.
5 on 19?
Section 5 on page 19.
Okay.
Third line has the word tenants in the event of any lease, rent lease of all or any portion of conservation area permitted by this easement. I don't think it is.
I don't understand it either. We just need
Okay.
we need an explanation.
Well, again, it's,
Yeah.
the rest of it I felt was legal,
Right, me too.
and there's, on 23, there's the word tenant, landowner's tenant, this is on 8.8B, third line. So there's mention of a tenant, even though
Tenant.
it's not permitted. The rest of it, I basically said that's essentially a legal issue, and I wasn't gonna venture
We
there.
did the same thing.
I've had some of these, they'll have one sentence that goes on for, like half a page, and then you suggest, like, maybe putting some punctuation in or something so you could read it. Oh, no, that changes the whole meaning, and it's,
Oh,
well,
well,
if I don't understand it, then it's,
Right. Well-
it's not very meaningful anyway, so, geez.
unless anybody, do you have any other comments?
I just have a question. Does LCHIP approve the easement also in some form or fashion before you're given the funding?
Yep, they need to see everything, and that's why they
Bless it.
usually add their own boilerplate
Yeah.
to something, and then we oftentimes can protest, and then we
Okay.
get overruled, so.
One of the things that would be helpful is that if you could do another draft for our next meeting.
Mhm.
That's sort of short notice, it's only a couple of weeks out.
Doesn't have to be.
So
Could be the next one.
I think the minutes will be prepared and issued for review for our next meeting. And so we could probably deal with your comments as to your review of what we said would be helpful. Even if there isn't the ability to do this, I'm suggesting something that may be too early, too soon.
Yeah,
to
maybe we
deal with.
can try
Well,
but we get to what we can, and
yeah,
if there's
well,
something
well,
deep,
your
we
comment,
can-
your receptivity to understanding our issues would be something helpful for our next regular
Yep,
meeting.
yep.
Okay?
I do have another question, Ralph. Have you had instances in the past where you put anything in place to protect abutters and, you know, keep trails away from the properties, so much distance for forestry, if you do log it, just so we're not infringing on the abutters' property lines with any activities.
Not, I would say, over and above laws that are in place now. We, you know, we're committed to making the property lines be a lot clearer than they are now and to maintain them.
Yep.
So we know where they are.
Right. Yep.
And, but, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's some places where, again, you're in people's backyards and you've got to respect that, so I don't.
And that's kind of what I'm getting
Yeah.
at, is not having a walking trail going right by,
Right.
at the bottom of
Yeah.
one of those property abutment lines that the homeowner's looking right at the trail and watching people walk by.
Well, and we've talked about that on the upper end of the property, around the Davis Pond
Yep.
area. And, again, I think we're headed towards making that whole north end, you know, we have pretty extensive rights in that whole development to get into this that come with the property, but we're probably gonna do an agreement where we,
Yeah.
you know, eliminate a lot of, I mean, we have beach rights, we have all this stuff that's in there because that's the way that the land was purchased. And,
Right.
but we're probably gonna negotiate away a
Yeah.
lot of those, and that's gonna be maybe more of a service entrance up there. I'd say we actually have a right of way past Madison Boulder to get into this property
Yep.
that probably nobody,
Thought
it
about.
certainly hasn't been used, but I mean,
Right.
in the future, it's possible that might be an appropriate entrance to the north part of the
Yeah.
property rather than going through
Right.
the development there,
Yeah.
you know, for instance.
And then the other area I'm concerned with that too is between the railroad tracks and Pine Hill, Forest Pines, part of that development.
Yeah,
In through there, just because it's not that far between the railroad tracks and those properties.
yeah, well, there's that long strip that's east of the tracks that's,
Yeah.
we would have nothing in there. I mean, that's just gonna be buffer, so.
Do you think there should be language though that explains that for 25 years?
Well, it would be, like I said, there's gonna be this baseline document and it'll be a multi-use management plan that will specify where we might be thinking about a trail or something, so we have to have it planned out and you have to be part of the process, so.
Yeah, I just want to mention it now, so when you are planning for that, you kind of have that thought process on where we stand before you even put that plan together.
Yeah,
And then I'm assuming that we're looking at all best management practices.
Well, it's the
Yeah,
forest
across the board.
management plan was that.
yeah.
Now, when you say that, Marcia, the only thing I'm concerned about is, you know, McNair easement was best management practice, but we ran into, there was opinions that it was not good enough.
Right, because that easement is so old,
Yeah,
and the language just, I mean, it was
Yeah.
state of the art at the time, but it's very
Yeah.
outdated now. So the best management practices in the new easement would be, you know,
The-
much better than
We
that.
Well,
don't-
they're written so that it's the most current version of best management
Yeah.
Right.
I just wanted to
practices,
make
so
sure
that's
best
the way.
management was good enough.
Those do evolve, you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So-
yeah.
One of the
Because then
things
we don't
that,
run into
We
that
don't,
issue.
we
in
don't
5
even know
years.
if they have a forest management plan on McNair easement. I don't think they do.
They do, cut all
Yeah,
the
that
trees,
was something.
just cut them all. That was the plan.
one of the things that we're subjected to with many of our easements and our properties, and is a requirement for a review. That we're obligated to do normal reviews, and we've looked at what the requirements are, and many of them we feel we can do it within a 3-year cycle. There was no words in here that obligate us to do that.
I'm sorry, a review of,
Like
The
stewarding,
easement.
stewarding the easement.
like monitoring?
Yeah,
Right.
yes,
More or less,
yes.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're relieving us of that obligation, that's fine. But I think that's normal course that we,
It's mentioned in-
as the easement holder, have an obligation to walk the property, do examinations and things of that nature.
I think it's up to your pace. We have to look at it every year
Right.
because we have we're an accredited land trust and it's part of
Alright.
what's imposed on us.
So I don't know whether it should be incorporated in the words here.
There's something up
Yeah.
on page 19, 6.2, of the stewardship,
Okay,
but I mean, it's
all right,
a little more general.
okay. All right,
This, I don't know who put the yellow stuff in here, but now, the next edition, Doug, just highlight the results of tonight's meeting so we know where those
We'll
changes are.
change it to reflect what we did. This, again, Linda put, some of these meant we're missing some information that
right.
we need on closing, and other things where, it's where she changed it.
Okay.
So that's why it's in there.
So we're past those things if we didn't
Now
comment
we'll use the
on.
yellow for the parts that we
Okay,
are
good.
All right,
changing,
good.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Okay.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second that.
So
Wait a minute.
what's the next step here?
So when's your meeting, so again, make sure I got it.
First Thursday of June.
That's the
Sixth.
6th, I think.
6th, yeah, at
4:30.
4:30.
So should we set up another meeting to meet here again to go over the revised one?
Well, let's get it first. And June 6th is right upon us, so we can make a decision at that point.
So are you okay with using your regular meeting time to get into the minutia here, or?
Probably not, but, you know, some of the major issues, like what is permitted,
Yeah.
clarifying that language, and a few other points where, you know, if there are, I think that's the most important issue to deal with. Maybe just the major issues,
Yeah.
a few major issues. And then, as a result of getting that, which may not be June 6th anyway, because it's a very short time period
Yeah,
for
It is,
this.
it's about too short.
So, let's decide what we want to do on June 6th.
What time is the June 6th meeting?
4:30.
4:30.
Okay,
But
I made a
we'll
motion.
do our best, so, to get it.
all right. I'll make another motion.
I'll second it.